Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining today's session. My name is Isabel. I am an event planner for the Reactor, joining you live from Sydney, Australia. Before we begin today's session, we have a quick housekeeping. We strive to create a welcoming, inclusive, and supportive environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, please let's keep all comments respectful, professional, and constructive throughout today's session. This session is being recorded and will be available to view on demand within 24 to 48 hours right here on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. And if this is your first time attending a Microsoft Reactor session, please note that you must create a YouTube account in order to have access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on social media or through the Microsoft Reactor website. I will now turn this over to our presenter. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello and welcome. We're in session 9. Who would have thought we've got this far this quickly? Doesn't seem like it. Mind you, the technology changes as quick as we've actually done the presentation. So let's get ourselves underway. We're going to be talking about Microsoft Loop today. And I get a lot of what is Loop. So we'll touch a little bit on that, but really it's more about Copilot inside Loop. You get a bit of an idea as we go along. If you're wanting to connect with me, please feel free to use the QR code, and also the presentation is available as a link in comments for you. So all the content is in there. We do have previous sessions and we've got a few more coming up. If you want to join us in a fortnight or so, we're going to have Whiteboard, and then we're going to go into Microsoft Forms and using Copilot in those two technologies. The recordings are all available on the Reactor, and they're also on my YouTube. We are going to go through a few of the various components, double check to see what you've actually got and how you can do some of the great prompting. The very first session we went into understanding how to do the GCSE, so our goal, context, source, and expectations of good prompting. That's in the very first session, along with the taxonomy and the things that help you to make a good prompt. So I'm not going to go back over that in this session. Please feel free to go watch the first one. So then double check, make sure, one, we're in the 365 ecosystem, and I do have a Copilot license. And today we're actually focused on, of course, Loop in Copilot. So here's my Loop, and I'm talking about Copilot in Loop. And if you do have a Copilot license, not just a Microsoft 365 license, one of the quickest ways for you to be able to double check is when you actually go online to your m365.cloud.microsoft, then you'll see you've actually got the Work Web button. So the Work Web button sitting there up the top. Okay, here we go. That's going to tell you they've actually got a license. If you don't have a license, then you're going to have limited functionality inside Microsoft Loop when you're going to do Copilot. So then where can you see it when you actually get into Microsoft Loop? And I'm going to go in and do a little bit of a walk around as well as this. Number one, I would actually go in and it's at loop.cloud.microsoft. It is in your Microsoft 365 environment. And it's actually the back end of quite a few things in the technology of the 365 ecosystem that you may not necessarily be aware of. So Microsoft Loop allows me to be able to do full collaborative kind of components and pages to be able to work and share with others. It's a very collaborative piece. So when I'm going in and I'm wanting to actually use Copilot inside Loop, then there are a couple of things that I can actually do on a blank page. The moment I do my slash, it's like everything across, it's going to actually then go, what do you want to do? Because it might go, do you want to insert a loop component, which is some of the different things down the bottom here? Or do you actually want to start doing some drafting or summarizing? What do you want to do on the page? Another way is when you're actually sitting just inside the content without even doing the slash, over on the right-hand side, you're going to see the Copilot button. So then it'll go, what do you want to do? I want to write or rewrite, if I've already started to type something, will actually come up for me to be able to work with. So that's kind of where you're going to find it when you get into Loop. When you first open a page, the very first thing that it's going to do is it's going to go, do you want to set up your page? So I can either go just a blank page and then I can start to type on the page, or I can actually start from a template or even reuse a previous page, a bit like a template. So if you've already got things like meeting agendas that you might have actually done up, for example, you can go use or reuse this page as my kind of design for what I want to do for this meeting. So quick and easy ways. Now, Loop give you a ton of templates to actually work with. It's very much in that kind of creative brainstorming, meeting kind of space. It is on that look at a little bit, not the creative as in I want to generate images. It's more the creative as in, the thinking out loud type process that you might kind of put down onto pages. So, Word is a little different. You could do stuff from Word over in Loop, for example, or maybe you're doing some whiteboarding over in, for example, on the whiteboard. You could do something somewhat similar in Loop. So that's kind of the different ways. Now, when I go in and if I want to actually access some content and I do that / and it goes, okay, well, what files do you want in there? At the moment, it's only looking at the Loop pages that you've already got, a bit like use this as a template, or it's now got a fairly recent-ish thing is PowerPoints as well. It used to be only kind of look at other pages, but now we can bring in PowerPoints. I like this because I've often got a lot of presentations, especially from the past, where I might have actually, opened it up recently. So it's in my recent list and I'll go, help me create an outline for this for, a client. Because I do lots of training. So for me, it's a lot of fun. I like it. So then what can it do across Microsoft Loop? A few things. One, I'm often going in and I'm kind of getting down, give me some strategies or some concepts or different ways. There's lots of ideation that I might actually do where I'm getting ready for workshops, or give me a bit of idea of various ways that I could tackle these kind of, workshop programs, or having some fun games to get people started. Outlines, doing some drafting. I often will summarize a page because what happens with Loop is when you create Copilot pages or you're doing some meeting notes inside Microsoft Teams, it actually generates Loop. So loops then get created in pages, which means I'm often going back and summarizing various information across from previous pages. I'm going to show you a bit of that. I regularly will ask content. I will rewrite plenty. Whenever I'm building out for sessions like this, for example, and I want an outline and give me, various things that I could talk about, I actually used Microsoft Loop to kind of help build out the synopsis for all of these sessions and, had it all structured out as to what I wanted to do using Microsoft Loop. Generating things like action items. So it's like, what can it look like? Project management, tasks list, so many great things. Now, depending on whether you've actually got a license or not will really depend on how you and your colleague potentially will work together, because Loop is also a very collaborative space. So if you have it, but they don't, what then happens? More often than not, they can see it, but they can't and they can even edit the physical content, but they can't go back into the history. They can't work with Copilot inside Loop because they don't actually have the license. They might have a Microsoft 365 license so they can do Copilot chat to kind of reason over content, but they can't kind of get into Loop. That's that embedding in the environment. So let's go have a bit of a play around. Let me bring up some content for you. So if I'm inside just chat. I'm doing chat and I'm working, whether it's work or web, for example. I've got different things. Web, of course, looking more external and bringing in knowledge from externally, or I could do something internally. I've got one here. Can you help me just prepare for this session, for example? Now, I'm in Copilot. I'm in chat. I'm not over in Loop. But why is this actually even of interest or importance? Because more often than not, if I'm getting myself, prepped and ready, and you may have seen this, we've done it on previous sessions. I think it was on session number 2 is where we were talking about chat. So in session number 2, I was kind of, going through, creating all of this content. And when I go edit in pages, what's actually happening is this is creating a Loop page. So I've got it now. I've got some information. Don't get confused by the fact that I'm talking about Copilot in Loop. That was the heading of this session. Now, this page here, I'm going to be able to see it when I actually go over into Loop. because the back-end technology of Copilot Pages is Loop. How about that? So from here, what does that then look like? When I'm looking for Loop, I can just go straight to the Loop page, or more often than not, I might be going into the apps and I'll go all apps. I do a bit of a, flow through to be able to find it. So I can actually see then Microsoft Loop. More often than not, when you're first dealing with it, it will look a little bit like this, and you probably won't have Loop content down the bottom here potentially, because that's when you start to create like workspaces. So it's like whole books that you can work and collaborate with others. Now, I've got some content in here and recent. I'm going to extend this back out again so that you can see it. Now, I've already created a new page, but how would I actually do that? More often than not, you start with your own kind of personal workspace. For example, I've got meeting notes that are actually being generated from my meetings that are then often flowing through. Now, if you've got the likes of Teams Premium, it will then help you to be able to create these kind of very interactive Loop components with action items and all flowing through into Loop pages, because the back end of Teams is looking at Loop for all of those note taking. So from there, I've got recents and notifications, and I can create my own kind of workspaces. So if I go back and I start to have a look at, I'm going to go into my workspace. So here you'll go, here is a blank page. And as part of that blank page, you'll also note that it's got, preparing for a live stream. That's the one that I just created over here in chat. Here it is here. So if I come back, and there it is there. So you can see I've got Loop open, and here is a previous page. Now, this is actually sitting in kind of my personal environment. And if it is things that I'm creating in my personal environment, it's going to be sitting in OneDrive. Now, it could be OneDrive, it could be SharePoint, but if you're dealing with Copilot pages or notebooks, for example, then we have what we call these SharePoint embeds. I don't want to go too technical on that, but they kind of live in their own kind of personal SharePoint spaces. So from here, I've got my content, and if I'm going and doing, let's go start here from scratch. I'm going to close this down so you can start to then see, here I am, there's this reuser page or user loop template. So if I'm going in and I'm going to use set up your page with Copilot, it could be I want to reuse a loop page so that I could build some content off what I've got, or use a template. So let's go. What are the type of templates? So I can use Copilot to go, and I want to create maybe an issues tracker. And I'm going to go edit it with Copilot. So I'm starting kind of with a template. So here we go. Set up a page based on the issues tracker. And maybe it's for a Windows 11 project. And please put this into a table, including Racy, for example. Who's going to be responsible? Who's going to action? And, let's have a look. Let's see if it actually what it'll do for me. So I'm creating, this is the page that it's creating, issues tracker, and I'm starting to put some content in. Here we go. And it's going, what could be then in there? Start menu, slowing. What are the things that could be there as a part of an issue? It's like, I like that. Or I could go back and start over. Go, sure, let's keep this draft. Relevant links, for example, things that you might want to kind of have a look at. Here a bit of a play, and let's go, feedback has been received regarding the interface, concerns starting with clarity. Like, I can come back and I can actually work with this content that's physically already now there. If I've got content I've created, I can come back. You'll see I've got a rewrite button that's actually up the top here, or a rewrite button over on the right-hand side. So I could go, rewrite this. You'll see here I've got different file references. So I could go and find something that I've actually worked on previously. It could be, based on my files. You'll see here previous kind of files. It's got previous content, loop pages, and presentations. If I don't want it based on a previous file, I could go, can you make this a little longer, maybe, and more formal with an explanation of what we are trying to achieve. For example, spelling mistakes. I'd have to fix that. Don't cope with that. Here we go. So It's then doing a bit of a rewrite for me. Thank you very much. So this is now something that I can actually share with my colleagues, because what I've got now is a fully interactive, so they can come in and they can work in these components. So I can go, I want to now share this page link out with others. So I go create it, or maybe I go just this here, for example. I could come in and you see you've got all of this content. I've got the ability to be able to work with it, play with it, move information, export it out. But I'm going to go here. I just kind of want to share. Give me a page link. So this will then go allow it, because I'm dealing with it online. So here it is. If it was more than the people, so if I go into my settings, I can do it with external parties. Okay, share with specific inside. Now, depending on what it is that I'm doing, I can actually go and work with some of those as well. So if it was instead, so say I want to go a loop component. If I'm going to do a loop component, more often than not, it's because I'm going over and I could be putting it into Outlook, or maybe I'm putting it into Teams chats or channels or as part of my meetings. Or maybe I'm putting into my OneNote book. I can actually take that component, this page and the component or components within it, and drop it across various other places. And they're fully interactive with my colleagues. Unlike a chat, when I send through a chat, it's kind of locked down. You say, I say, you say. Instead, I put a component in and we can all work in that component. And I can see it and track it in real time. So from here, I've got my content. I've done a bit of a rewrite. If it is a brand new, so say I come back and I could be even sort of summarize this page. So if I come up to the top, I've got my Copilot button up the top here. And with this, you'll see here, I've got search, understand, ask. What could it be? It could be summarize this document, for example. Or maybe I'm wanting, what are the key milestones that I need? Or create an email with the key milestones that are on this page based on our project, and I want to use that in an email. More often than not, like we've talked about it on a previous session, I would sort of go, remove the reference numbers from it if I'm going to create an email. That's the thing. So you can see here's the overview, goals, and relevant links. I could go, can you turn this into an email to send to Isabel? It was about Isabel. I'm giving you an unusual name there. So it's like, okay. So what I might do is go, here we go, primary goals, relevant links, for example, and I could then copy it. So I've copied that. And, from here, there's so many things that I could actually be doing. And I build this kind of, what are some of the Copilot capabilities, things that I could actually, work on, and case studies and benefits. Give me a course outline. And I'm going to come back. Let's do that one in a second. So if I go over into Outlook, for example, so see, here we go. I've currently got, here's the project. This one's going based on, I want to create a project on something, for example. Now, I could be coming up and come up to the top and I could just paste some of the content in. Here's my Windows 11 project issue tracker, some of the relevant links. I could then go back in and I could physically put the link into certain content. But what I've done here is I've actually come in, and as part of my email, I've gone insert a loop component. And in my prompts, so I've got different prompts that I've created as I've kind of worked on it over time. So if I look at my history, it goes, the first one was just, can you create me just a task list? So here's a task list of things that we could be sort of working on for the project. Now I'm using a loop component. Now I created this with Copilot. And then I went, hang on a second, I don't like that. Can you turn it into a bit of a table for me? It's like, sure, here's your task and here's your action items. And I've gone, actually, can you also put in, what is then, some of these kind of different headings with this sort of task list? I want to fix this because I also wanted who was responsible. So give me some responsible, who could be responsible. And I could drop this in. I can go back to these anyway by the point. But then I went, hang on, I'm actually using ADCAR and also ADDIE as a, theory and a framework and models, because I deal with ProSci. So it says, what category does this kind of sit on? when it comes to where it should physically be. Now, if I didn't like those headings, I could go one step further because I'm kind of going, hang on a second. This one has category, but this one was kind of category was just a little bit different. Okay, so I kind of go, maybe I'll go, can you please include the, category of what's included. Now, it's probably going to go over the top, plus which model it is in a separate column. For example, let's move. So I'm using Copilot. Now I'm doing this in Outlook. So I've still got my loop. I've got my content. Let's see, it's just pulling things together. It'll now give me maybe another suggestion. Now, I didn't put all of the things that I might actually want in one big prompt. We'll see what comes out. Because I just kind of went, now see, I'm liking this a little bit more. Thank you very much. Because it's building on top of. It's Copilot. So I can go back and forward because it's generative AI. So I can go back and forward in conversation. So here we go. This is looking pretty good for me now. So I've got, what does that look like? I've got my project. Here's a bit of a summary for the, issue tracker we've got going on. Then we've got our project content. Now this will be fully interactive inside the email that I can then send off. Love it. Where else am I going to find it? Because do you know what? When I'm over in Outlook, you can get to Loop directly through Outlook. I don't necessarily need to always go online. I can also get to it over in Microsoft Teams. So here we are, we're over in Teams. There's different functionality. Now I've got chat open here on a previous meeting. You will see I can go in, here's some content where we've talked about before and I could just use Copilot to rewrite, but I've gone and inserted a loop part. So this is that component. So it's like from a page, I've inserted a component, and in that component, I go, okay, getting ready. Here's drafting some content. So drafting the page content. What do I want to do in my chat? So here we go. I want to, brainstorm ideas on different topics we can have for the next adoption user group. And I want people to be able to vote on this. Plus, add more content or more suggestions. Let's go suggestions. Here we go. So this is some of the things that I would actually do when I'm workshopping with organizations and helping them out. So let's have a look. Let's see what it does. Okay. Suggested topics, how to vote and contribute. Now, it could be because what I did was I've started with potentially the wrong kind of thing in the first place. Because I've got, brainstorming ideas. Let's go. Let's do it a different way. So I'm going to go to start. So what you start with, because if you choose certain content, see here it's tables, checklists, task lists. Okay. Now, I went down to draft, but I could go in and just say, I want a voting table. And that would then be a little different in terms of my structure. So from here, I might then go copy and paste, or maybe I go in and go rewrite and do some functionality there. Different ways I can actually go and work over the top of it. Now, a lot of the times, like I've got over in Outlook, I will go into Loop as a component here as well. So here we go. It looks a lot like online. I'm currently in my workspace. So here's all my previous content, including other work there. Here's the kind of course outlines, project issue tracker that I created not that long ago. Here we are, project issues, and it's all flowing through from one space to the other. A lot of times, as you said, you can do the summary over the top, but what else is there? More often than not, if I've gone in and I've edited, I could even with my colleagues. Now, whether I do it here or online or through Outlook, it doesn't really matter. It's all kind of the same. It's got your version history of your pages because it is Loop, but you'll see it's got recap. And as part of that recap, it is an AI functionality. And with my recap in here, I can come back in and go, can you recap any of the changes? So that as a collaborative component, as we're working, it will tell me exactly what's been done. And I can put that in as a post for others to be able to see what we've been doing. It's a bit of a recap, a bit like recaps of your meetings, for example, because I regularly do go back and do that sort of thing. Now, if I'm looking for past meetings and if I'm dealing with, because I'm dealing with Microsoft Loop, for example, I actually have it and it is sitting in my OneDrive. I'm currently in my files, I'm underneath meetings, and I can see they're actually .loop files. So here's a lot of my pages and previous information that I've actually got, and I can physically see over in OneDrive to be able to come back to. Great part is I can even reason over those loop pages with Copilot. Gives me a little bit of an idea. If I go back and I'm physically opening up that meeting, here is that meeting notes. It's sitting in here. I've kind of opened it back up again. I can view the recap of this meeting because it is available for me. So here is kind of my recap. Here's my loop component. I could copy that and put it into a chat with someone else. So all these little components, they're like a plug and play wherever you go. So I do love them because it's so collaborative and interactive. And the fact that I can use Copilot as part of it, sweet. Okay. So from there, the type of other things that come into play? Because if I'm coming back, if I come all the way back to my chat, one, there's those pages, the previous pages that I've actually worked on because they're off the back and I've got my history. These are those loop pages that I can also see over in the likes of, potentially OneDrive or Loop or wherever. And notebooks that have come into play. Notebooks also have a lot of loops sitting in the back end. So I can bring kind of loop pages and reason and information over that where I kind of all sort of draw it together into one space. So no matter kind of where you go, if I'm bringing in a content, so say I come back into my workspace and I've got previous meeting notes, recents, all those sorts of things. If I go back, I go new page. So give me a new page, getting started. And instead I go, I want to go draft some content based on a file, and I want to do it based on files. Here we go, previous, here we go, mastering. So here I'm going to go, create me a course outline based on my presentation, for example. So here we are. And drafting content based on something that I've actually attached. I could do it, as I said, based on previous. Can you give me summaries? Can you give me action items? Can you give me step-by-steps? So it will work on this and just drop it in for me. So closing out. Here it is. So now I've got draft modularized course outline, and I can share that with my colleagues. So when I get in and you get things like Copilot Loop pages, as I said, you can do them across such a variety of spaces that you could drop these loop pages and components in all over the place and reason over it with Copilot and working. If you are dealing with things like workspaces and pages, getting to know a little bit more about those SharePoint embeds and what does that look like, they can only kind of be accessed by the administrators of your environment. So sometimes if you're trying to find, you may not. So there's a bit of information there. There's lots on the prompting gallery. I've put in some fun prompts that have actually been suggested by Copilot, and some of the things that I actually do based on content I've created in the past, things that I kind of do all of the time. As always, there's plenty of information in here where you can find. There's a great Loop 5-part product learning series if you want to learn a little bit more, as well as some recent webinars that were actually run that is now on a Loop learning series on their page. Go and have a look at all the Working Smarter and Insight. I've put a ton of links in here to be able to help and support you on you not only using Copilot in Loop, but also Loop, because a lot of people aren't quite sure what it is. So some content, same as before. All of this is in here. Have a look at the libraries. Have a look at the content. Unfortunately, the prompting gallery only has one Loop prompt. Makes it a little tough. But there's lots of learning courses around Copilot. Don't forget, you can go and download my infographic, and the true power of Copilot actually lies in you doing some learning and changing the way that you actually work. And that is up to you, some of the behaviors. There's lots of tech that we can use, but I do particularly love working in Loop components. Thank you so much for joining yet again. I hope you've enjoyed getting your head around not only Loop, but Copilot in Loop and where you can actually find it. Here is the link. It is in chat, or you can scan it as part of the series. And I will see you again in a couple of weeks when we go in and start having a look at it over in Whiteboard, I think it is. Thanks for coming along. Bye all.